So welcome everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We're having every 2 weeks we have a webinar. We discuss different subjects around horsemanship and horsemanship training and horse training. This evening we're going to talk about trail riding, obstacle training, and that sort of thing. Just getting your horse ready for being able to hack out. Where I come from, we call it trail riding. Here they call it hacking out. Excuse me. Let's have a little sip of this. And as a lot of you will know, and some of you from the UK, some of you this evening are from different parts of the world, but as you know, in the UK, it's quite a tricky environment to get your horse out safely hacking on the roads in the UK, because you don't have a lot of space available for outriding and being able to get your horse into a safe place with hacking out. So there's a lot of obstacles you face out there on a daily basis, and it takes time and patience to get your horse to that level where it's trustworthy and you trust it and it trusts you to step out onto the road. Some areas I go to, I just wonder how people actually get through it, because it's crazy out there. There's some dangerous driving and not much knowledge around drivers when it comes to getting around horses and what have you. So it's pretty dangerous out there. So it's quite a extensive topic to be talking about. So if there's any questions along the way, please feel free just to ask. If you're having any specific problems or anything specific that you want to talk about. But I'll just give you a little bit of background on me. For some of you I haven't actually dealt with yet. I've had a lot of experience with horsemanship and horses over the years. Been brought up on a farm in Zimbabwe. We had 80-odd horses. We ran cattle. We owned about 2,000 head of cattle. We grew crops. We had lots of game on the farm. One of the things that was good about having all this stuff going on our farms was the horses got really used to being around cattle. We had pigs, sheep, goats, chickens, guinea fowl, you name it. And obviously out in the bush, we had zebra, all sorts of different soft-skin game. And we used to take tourists out for rides onto the farm to see the game, and anything from a 2-hour ride to a 3-day ride to see the rhino, so camping out in the bush. So I've had extensive experience trail riding over the years. I've spent some time in Australia and New Zealand working with different people there. I've been on some amazing treks in New Zealand and Australia. I also spent a year in Argentina, in northern Argentina, riding out of Salta, right up in the northern province of Argentina. I spent a year trekking out on horseback with a couple of horses, camping out along the way. I covered about sort of 20 to 40 miles a day on horseback. Occasionally I would be invited into locals, and in one instance the mayor of a little village, and so I spent some time in different villages, and also spent some time with the gauchos out in Argentina, herding cattle and doing rodeos and all that sort of thing. So I've had a lot of experience riding out. Most people who are stuck in a small environment don't get to do that sort of thing. For example, walking along on a path in the Andes with a 1,000-foot rise and a 1,000-foot drop on the other side, on a 1.5 to 2 meter path. So one of the things I would do when we were riding out on the trails in the mountains was they'd have a call. So you couldn't pass another horse. If you met another horse coming along the trail, you were doomed. There's just no ways you could get around each other. So what they used to do is they used to call out to each other. So before you went through a pass where there were no passing points, they would have a certain call to call each other on either side of the mountains to make sure that they didn't meet up halfway through the mountain. So pretty amazing, pretty scary experience to start with, walking with packs on and trekking through the mountains. We went up to 4,500 meters roughly. Quite an experience. And learning to trust your horse was a big part of that, because you're very vulnerable. You're sitting up high with a 1,000-meter drop down below you. I can tell you it's you have to trust your horse to do this sort of thing, and anything can happen along the way. So that's just a very brief excuse me, outline of my personal experience. Also growing up as a child on the farm, we used to during the holidays, we used to hop on our horses and go right out to, we had 3 farms at the time, so we used to ride out to a farm and camp out, and we used to gather our own food and live out in the bush. So my brother and I started doing this from a very young age. So that's a bit of experience, a bit of a history on trail riding as such. As far as obstacles go, I've set up various obstacle courses in the UK and also in South Africa. So one of the things I do offer is you can come along to a trail riding obstacle type course. And we put bridges down, we put water down, we put big tires to stand on, and just getting your horse used to going over different obstacles, standing on different surfaces, and being able to do all that sort of thing. So groundwork is where it's all at. Obviously, when moving to trail riding, there's a whole process before we even get to trail riding that I like to go through, and part of that is my groundwork, part of that is my desensitizing, getting my horse used to going through tight spaces over different surfaces. I've got a nice bridge that I've built, so sending my horse onto platforms and bridges and that sort of thing. So that helps with getting your horse ready for going out on a trail ride. So if you have to go over a bridge or through a ditch or through some water, the thing is in England that we don't have a lot of opportunity to do that. So if you're able to go to trail riding type clinics or obstacle type training clinics, it's a really good thing to be able to do. Excuse me, just to prepare your horse for that outriding. So it all starts on the ground. Once we've established a connection and a relationship with our horse on the ground, and we're able to do our groundwork, being able to send our horse around us, over, through, and into different types of obstacles. That's a whole different subject. But being in a position to train your horse to accept different surfaces or a bridge or different obstacles takes time, takes connection. I'm a great believer in building that connection first. Once you have a connection with your horse, you should literally be able to ride it through fire. But that takes a lot of time and effort. So groundwork is where it's all at. My groundwork techniques are proven and work really well with getting a horse into the position where it can take on different obstacles, different environments. Obviously, out on the trails in England, you're going to meet combine harvesters, motorbikes, bicycles, you name it. And on a daily basis, I deal with this type of thing and getting horses used to getting out there. I'm working with a horse at the moment that's 10 years old that is able to ride in the arena, but is not able to go out on the road. So we're doing a lot of in-hand work. But first of all, I have to establish that I have some sort of connection and some sort of ability to direct my horse into different directions and get them out of trouble. Because if I hit the road, especially on the ground, and I haven't done my groundwork, I'm probably going to end up in trouble if I don't have a good connection with my horse and able to send it left, right, backwards, forwards, just the basic things to start with. So I'll do a lot of walking out, taking my horse out in hand, my young horse out in hand, once I've established a very good groundwork pattern with my horse and understanding with my horse. And I'll hit the road and I'll do a lot of walking out with my horse. When I first start to go out, I won't take the horse very far away from the stables. I'll take him out maybe a half 500 meters or not too far from the stables. Often I'll let them have a little graze. Then I'll bring them back. So that'll be their first outing, and I'll be building on that slowly but surely. Obviously, I'm going to meet different things along the way, whatever it might be, a tractor, a car, and that sort of thing. If you could desensitize your horse before you even hit the road with these sorts of things. I have done it before in the UK with a motorbike, so I can take a motorbike along to a clinic or to a person's yard, especially if they're having problems with that. Sometimes the bicycles are a really sneaky thing that can sneak up on you on the roads. The important thing to remember is that often the horse will hear or smell or pick up on something coming way before we do. So being aware of yourself, being aware of your horse, and being aware of your environment, because often the horse will tell you way before something's happening that there's something coming along. For example, a bicycle, they'll often pick that up long before we do. I had an instance a couple of weeks ago with a lady who been riding out every day on the same trail for the last 4 years. and the horse suddenly decided that it wasn't going to go around a particular corner. She spent a lot of time trying to figure it out. She got some help with it. Nothing seemed to help. They got the stick out. They got the spurs out. They tried everything to get this horse out back onto the road and onto the trail. So I went out and paid her a visit. And the first thing I thought was, there's a reason why things happen. There's always a reason. There's, a lot of the time we say my horse is naughty or trying to get me off. There's all sorts of these excuses, but often all the time there's a reason for these things. And what I said to her is, let's just going to have a walk. It wasn't too far from the stables. Let's going to have a walk. And we walked around, and there was a bit of forest on the corner. Walked into the forest, and I saw a dead badger on the side of the road. So the horse had picked up on the dead badger. So, being aware of these sorts of things is critical to overcoming the obstacles that may come up. Sometimes you may not see what the obstacle is. Also notice quite a lot when people are riding through down these country roads, especially in the summer when it goes from light to dark. Often your horse will stop and have a good look and readjust its eyesight. Now, horses don't focus as quick as humans do, go from light to dark and refocus as quick as humans do. They take a little bit of time to adjust to light because they're not used to flicking a light on and off. It always happens gradually. So often the horses going into dark, scary spaces is quite a common problem that people have out there. And what I tend to do is, if the horse stops and has a look at anything and is for some reason won't go forward, I will often just step back, relax, and let the horse take in the environment. Often after a minute or a couple of minutes, the horse will have a look around, it will suss out the situation, and then it will move on. What we tend to do is get after the horse and start to push it and encourage it to go forward when it's not ready to go forward. So if you can find a safe place to stop, this is in hand or when I come to my ridden side, a safe place to stop and just let the horse take it in. Now, I appreciate especially on English country roads, there's sometimes where you just can't find space and you can't get out of a situation which is, can be really dangerous. The people being hit out there, people spooking their horses, spooking, all sorts of things happen out there. So making sure that your horse is prepared before you sit on it to cope with these things, I believe is critical. I'm just going to have a sip of my tea. Has anyone got any questions? No questions? Okay.
I'll give you a question if you want.
Yep.
What's the best way to handle a horse when it's spooked? So you're in a situation when it spooks. How sensitive is that horse going to be to you and how you respond? Or are they on autopilot at that point?
But if they've got into fear or flight mode, you're going to have a problem hanging on to that horse. Obviously, our preparation before we get out on the road is the preparation that we can bring the horse back to us and maintain that connection with the horse. But often that'll get broken by something scary coming up. So I use a 14-foot training rope and my halter. So what quite often happens if we're walking down the road, for example, with a really short rope on our halter, and that horse swings and goes, you've got no chance of hanging on to it. So having a longer rope was one way to get the horse back to you. Because if he goes on you, there's no way you're going to bend him with a short piece of rope on him. So being able to handle him on the rope and to get him to safety is what's important, I guess. Does that answer all of your questions, Jim?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So it's largely to do with preparation. So, for example, when I'm walking out on the road and I'm getting my horse used to being out on there, if a car came past me, I turn my horse around if I have the opportunity and walk after a car or walk behind a bicycle or whatever it might be. I tend to go past whatever it may be and then turn around and follow it. So I do a lot of following and builds the horse's confidence. So if a car comes past me and we're going in the same direction, I might pick up and I might trot off behind it if I was riding, for example. So I do quite a lot of following and that helps build the horse's confidence. Important thing is, just touching on what Jim said too, is the emotional state of the horse. So there's a lot of time spent preparing the horse emotionally before we step out on the road, that the horse can maintain itself emotionally at a walk, trot, and a canter, in the arena, progressing from there out into a field. If I can't on the ground maintain a nice soft posture and connection with my horse at a walk, trot, and a canter, I can't do that in the arena and out in the field. I probably wouldn't be stepping out into the road unless I had that in place. So that's, it all comes back to, a lot of the time, it comes back to groundwork, connection, and obviously relationship. We got here. I've got just a small example of something that I came across once out in northern Argentina. Now, out in northern Argentina, there's not a lot of fences, especially when you get into the high country. You don't come a lot of fences. But when I was heading out of Salta City into the countryside, I'd spent about a week on horseback. This was a really important time for me because I lived with my horses basically 24/7 for just almost a year. It was a huge learning curve for me. And anyway, one day I came across, there weren't many, like I said, there weren't many fences around, but I came across a fence with a cattle bridge. And if anyone knows cattle bridges out in that part of the world or in Africa, often you have you'll have your cross members on your cattle bridge, and then you'll have one cross member that goes across from one side to the other. This particular one was quite wide compared to ones I've seen in the past. It was about 6 inches wide. I rode up and down either fence line, and it was a brand new fence, and there was no way through. There was no gates, and there's a direction I was wanting to head in. So I spent some time thinking about this, and I thought, I wonder if I could get my horse across this bridge. It's a 6-inch steel girder, and I've got no way of getting around here. So I gave it a go, and I walked my horses across the cattle bridge with a 6-inch girder. And they stood perfectly on the girder and walked through it. So there's not many people that could do that, many horses that could do that. But these horses, obviously, they brought up in that environment and perceptive to what was going on around them. So I was able to do that sort of thing. And it's an important thing, is what can I do with my horse? What is my horse able to cope with before I kind of head out into the big wide world out there? So that's really, really important for me. Right. Anyone got any questions? Any specific things that you're dealing with, maybe? Lindsay, Susan. Nothing there? Okay, so I've got a couple of questions that people have put through to me. This first one we've actually discovered. This, why is it important to work through obstacles on the ground before riding them through? So I see quite a few people go to, I think they call them agility courses, so obstacle courses, and just to desensitize their horse. And it's a great thing to do. But what I'm finding that a lot of people are doing these obstacles desensitizing courses are not taught to send their horses through obstacles or around obstacles. So being able to not only walk your horse through or over a bridge, for example, or through water, but also being able to send them through. So you're asking the horse to take a direction and to go through something specific, builds the horse's confidence and also its emotional ability to cope with different situations, because obviously they're not brought up in a situation where they have all these obstacles, where they have all this pressure. So us teaching them how to cope with this, so the emotional side of coping with an obstacle is more important to me than getting them through it. So not only being able to walk them through something, but being able to send them through water, for example. So it's a really important part of the process to establish, obviously, the horse can trust you to send it through different things, but emotionally is the horse able to cope with that? And that all stems and comes back to simple things like, for example, we've covered earlier, to walk, trot, and canter a circle with calmness and ease and with a low head carriage. I was working with someone today. In fact, this week I've had a lot of problems with people who've got young horses and one older horse that the ladies just bought, and they've had problems with lunging. And I'm finding a lot of problems actually stem from lunging, especially if it's done incorrectly. So I do send my horses around me, but I call it, you could call it lunging for connection, because I'm looking for more of a connection with my horse, that I can transition it, walk, trot, and canter on the ground. So I'm looking for a nice connection and smooth walk, trot, and canter before I even step out of that arena or onto the road. So that's the importance of doing obstacles on the ground. It's more to establish a connection, and for your horse to feel safe, that you can send it round through or over different obstacles. So that helps with setting out on the road, engaging your horses, how he copes with these different things, being able to gauge that, being able to read your horse, see whether he's in a good emotional state, whether he's coping with these things or not. That's really an important part of the training process, is being able to recognize that. And that's where coming to see you and spending time with you, that's where we work together to identify and learn to read the horse and understand when it's getting when things are getting past its ability to cope with it. And it's the same when I sit on the horse. One of the things we put in place on the ground is being able to flex and bend our horse. This often helps with bringing focus back to you. So when you're sitting on your horse, you're able to easily bend and flex. So for example, if I was out on the road and the horse was starting to escalate, so things were coming out, and call it, I think someone called it the other day, the rabbit syndrome, where one thing happens, a car may come past, and then a bicycle, and then a tractor, and then a butterfly flies out and your horse explodes and runs away. So often people are confused as why have I just done all the stuff and now a butterfly flew out and my horse absolutely lost it. And that is an escalation and keeps adding to the horse's emotional instability. So being able to bring it back and get it emotionally stable again is a really important part of actually hitting the trail, because I want to bring that horse back down, because if it just keeps loading up with stress, I'm going to have an explosion and a run down the road. So if I can, for example, if I saw it starting to escalate, I might find somewhere where I can pull off the road. And I know in England, I'll say this to people and they say often there's not a place to stop, and I understand this, but if it's possible to be able to stop and just flex your horse, get it to relax and release. Flexing helps bring the pole down, helps release anxiety, but also brings, when they look around you with their left or their right eye, it also brings them to look at you and to focus back on you. So it's a really good technique to be able to do. But once again, I've mastered these flexing or bending techniques on the ground. So that's where the key comes in, is all the stuff is done on the ground first before we actually sit on the horse. So that's a good way to bring down the escalation of stress, is obviously just to be able to stop. I was working with a couple of Andalusians, again, just to have a little story the other day, and we just started working with them and we took them out for an outride. I said to the owner of the two horses, I said, let's just stop on the corner here, do some flexing and de-escalate. Now we just started working together, and she basically said, I can't stop. So she goes on a trail ride down to start with a 60k limit, speed limit, 60 mile limit speed on a road, and heads down the road, and she cannot stop a horse and stand still, and get that to quiet and stand still. Annabelle Joyce, let me just.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Did you have a question, Annabelle?
Yeah, what you've just been saying about the groundwork and getting them back to you.
Yes.
I mean, I've been working on that. Obviously, I've seen you last Monday,
Yes.
And my youngster is so, like you said, he goes from one to explosive.
Yeah.
But getting them back down to your level and stress-free is now getting easier. So hopefully you'll see that when I see you next week.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. So you're using the release on the halter and just getting the drop and release.
Yeah, he did that. I've got it on video. I was so chuffed.
Oh,
he actually did it. Yep.
Brilliant. Well done. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but generally it doesn't take too long to get them to learn to release and relax from just from that pressure from the halter. But that release on the halter turns into a flex and a bend. And that's what I use to de-escalate. It's also my handbrake. Obviously, if things go wrong with my horse, I can pick up and bend my horse. So a really important part of my training process. Some of the different styles of riding, they look for a bend, but it's not the kind of bend that I look for. I'm looking for disengagement. Not all the time, but when I need it, I've got it. And often when the horse escalates and gets into maybe trot or canter or into fear mode, you'll find that can be tricky to bring that flex in or that relaxation. But it's possible with repetitive work in terms of flexing or bending.
Definitely, as I'm finding out. Absolutely brilliant.
Brilliant. So have you been able to send him round? And
yep, he's been I've basically yesterday I've done 4 lots of work with him.
Wow.
And yesterday I got a left and a right with no paddy wax.
Brilliant.
Done that a few times.
Yep.
And what else did I get that he doesn't normally? What was he doing that was really bad? He wouldn't connect. So he wouldn't connect to me, would he? So he wouldn't turn and face me.
Yeah.
I got that twice yesterday.
Oh,
so he actually, when I asked him to stop, he actually come in and stood in front of me rather than behind at the back of me.
Right.
So I got that yesterday. Yeah.
Good. So you're feeling more of a connection coming?
Definitely. Oh my God. Even in just one session from you. So, yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's good to hear. Well, I look forward to seeing it. Well, I think I'll see you next week, won't I?
Monday, I think it is, yeah.
Monday, yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Great. Oh, that's wonderful. Good news. So, what the techniques and the methods I use, there's lots of different methods out there. A lot of them are similar. But I think the difference that I'm finding in what I'm sort of advocating is looking for that relationship connection. And also a really important part that I'm finding is showing people how to get their horse to find relaxation, because often we don't know where to get that, and the horse doesn't know where to get that because he's in a not in a normal environment that he would be if he was in a herd. So he's often they're on their own. They might be next to other horses or whatever, but they don't have that interaction and security of a herd, because when a herd reacts, when one reacts, they all react. So if they're all calm, it's great. But if one picks up and goes, then they're all off. So, being able to show that horse where to find relaxation, and that's where a lot of it's a game changer. It's an absolute game changer. Now, and I'll do that also out on the trail. If I need to, I'll stop. If I was riding, for example, and it was getting out of hand, hopefully I've done my prep so I don't have those problems. But if I can't flex and bring the horse down on the when I'm sitting on it, I'll hop off. Some people are, don't want to get off because sometimes it's hard to get back on, especially if you use a mounting block. But I might just hop off and get the horse to relax, get it to drop its pole below its wither, do some flexing, and just get it to de-escalate. And then once I'm happy that the horse is calmed down, then I'll head off again and see whether that escalates again. So great techniques to use for calming and also reassurance. So when will you get your horse out, Annabelle?
In about 10 years' time. Yeah, definitely not yet. Long way to go.
Yeah, but
work in progress.
Yeah, but you see, you can see where we're heading with it all.
Oh God, definitely. I can now. It all makes sense. It didn't before.
Yeah.
Obviously, before you came, because I was getting muddled with so many different ways of dealing with youngsters and trying to find the right method of working with horses. It's like some people don't think horses have emotions. Well, they do have emotions, like humans do.
Absolutely.
But so it's just finding the right person to help, and I've found that person in you. Thank you very much.
No, it's a pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Okay, so anyone else got any questions? I have got a couple of more questions on my sheet here from people, but has anyone got any question, any specific questions, anything specific they might be facing? Nobody. Okay, so I'll just have a look through here. Okay. My horse won't go through water. Why? So, I mean, there's a few reasons why a horse won't go through water. One is they may not know how deep it is, and one of the things that's interesting to watch is if you watch a horse walking out in a paddock or in the bush or on a road or what have you, to see whether they avoid puddles or not. And most likely you'll see a horse he'll avoid puddles. If there's water everywhere and you can't avoid them, then he has to go through them. In England, obviously, there's a lot of water. There's a lot out there, but still, I get people people with their horse that won't walk through water. So if I set up a water obstacle and ask the horse to walk through it, quite often they won't walk through that, even though they live out in a wet environment. And often that comes down to, obviously, firstly, I go back to my connection with my horse and my relationship with my horse. So if I ask him or point him in a direction, he'll quite happily follow my lead and go through the obstacle. But if you haven't got that connection and that trust, you're going to find problems. But the next thing is often they won't know how deep it is. Horses have quite poor depth perception. So they don't see the depth. They don't have the depth perception that we have. And also because the eyes are set on the side of the head, they see things differently, and they also process things differently through the retina to the brain. So things process different to humans. They see things different to humans. They don't have a great depth perception. For example, as a human, we don't do this anymore. But for example, we could run through the bush with a spear. And after a buck, for example, and we're able to coordinate all that. We're able to run, throw a spear, and coordinate how fast, for example, the deer is running, and throw the spear, and whether you get it or not, that's another thing. But just an example of how we're able to put all that together. Also don't have that sort of ability. What they have is flight. So that's a big thing about horses and horse training, is that we're dealing with a flight animal. And that's never going to change. So, being able to stay on your horse is really important to you. So if things do go wrong, that you can stay on your horse. But understanding that they don't have a good depth perception, for example, with water. So you might see them get up to the water, they might sniff it, getting them through that obstacle or that the water. There's a process to that too, and basically it involves getting the horse to make up its mind that it's okay to do it, presenting the opportunity for do it. But often they'll take their hoof and they'll splash in the water, and they'll check the solidity of the ground. That could, for them, they don't know how deep that water is because they have poor depth perception. So they might pour the water and not want to go in the water because they don't know whether it's safe or not, whether the ground's safe, how deep the water is, and that sort of thing. So understanding how horses think is really important. Also the ability to focus is different to a human. If a human focuses quite different. So if you put your hand out in front of you, you focus on your hand, and then you look up and you focus at something maybe 20 meters away. It takes a couple of seconds for the human eye to refocus on one thing to the other. A horse has instantaneous focus, but in quite a different way. When its head's down, it's looking through the top of the retina. When its head's up, it's looking through the bottom of the retina. But nature designed them that way so that they can get away quicker. Because those couple of seconds, if it had to focus from here to there, those couple of seconds for a horse is death. If a lion came out or something, of that nature, those couple of seconds is death. So a horse is designed by nature to focus immediately. That's why they'll go from their head down in a low position and just all of a sudden, wham, the head's up and they're focusing through the bottom of the retina. So it's important to understand things like that about horses, especially when you're out there and you're trying to cope with all the stuff going on around you. It's pretty hectic out there, and I see some people out there on the roads on horses, and I just think I wouldn't go out and do that. So I think people are really brave getting out on some of these roads. As a kid, I was brought up in the bush, and we had very different type of things. You had game, you had you had snakes, we had cheetah around, we had all sorts of things. So I learned how to read my horse's body language, and I could more or less tell what was coming up. So say if it was a herd of wildebeest or there was a cheetah in the area, I could actually read my horse's body language and how it was communicating what was coming up ahead, because they communicate differently with different types of animals out there. So we had a whole different environment that we had those horses in. The thing is that they were brought up in that environment. So it's hard to recreate that sort of environment in this country. We have a whole different environment to deal with, but it's really fast. It's really dangerous. And, I can't reiterate enough is being able to bring your horse and de-stress and de-escalate the anxiety or the fear that's escalating, is being able to do that and recognizing when it's coming up. Because quite a few people say to me, well, it happened all of a sudden, he just turned and spun. It doesn't happen like that. It happens at normally an escalation of things. So, and often we don't see the escalation. He'll see something and the head will come up and you'll look at it, and then we'll move on, and then you'll look at something else, and then we'll move on. But those are escalations. Those can slowly rise. And when they pop out and overflow, and then your horse at bang has gone on you. So being able to read your horse, being able to do that de-escalation before that actually happens, that's what we need to learn. That's what we need to be aware of. And some of us are aware of that. Some of us may not have the right techniques to de-escalate and bring that down. But that's what I'm here for. So, any other questions? Any specific things that you might be dealing with? Nobody? You all got good horses, safe out there? Okay. All right. Okay, so we just touched on going through water. My horse won't go through water. So allowing the horse to investigate, to check out that it's safe to go through. Often you could walk through the water if your horse was really worrying about something. We could walk through for it. You'll often find that you'll get to an obstacle like that, or a bridge or something, and your horse just refuses to go over the bridge because we haven't had the time or the environment to prepare it for a little wooden bridge, maybe a meter wide, to walk over and over a river. If you haven't done it before, and you haven't got a good connection and a relationship with your horse, you might find it difficult to get over the bridge. We did this on one of our trail riding clinics last year, and it was really difficult for a lot of horses to get over it. But we did the groundwork, and we spent a lot of time working on groundwork on a bridge, sending them over the bridge, getting them to stand on the bridge, to relax on the bridge, and then progressed from groundwork to my ridden work, and then be able to do the same thing, ride it up onto the bridge, be able to stop it on the bridge, relax it on the bridge. Often when we go to a bridge and we're out in the country, or you'll find that your horse will scoot through, so you'll get onto it, and my God, the ground's scary. It's got sides on it. There's a drop, so it's and it's all panic, and boom, shoot through the bridge. That's one of the questions I got through here is when I get to a bridge crossing, my horse rushes across, and it's very unsafe, and it almost killed me on the other side. So, a lot of the stuff will come back to preparation. It's like going to a show. There's a difference between a training show, for example, and a competitive show where you want to compete and do well at. Is to expose your horse to these things and make sure you've done your preparation. If you go to a trek or a working equitation, obviously you're going to practice, or dressage, or you're going to practice what you do before you get there if you can, or you treat it as a training opportunity. So I'm going to train my horse and go down. But what you don't want to do is go and push your horse past what it's capable of dealing with. And often we see that we'll go to a jumping class or something, and the horse is not really prepared for it, and the horse is refusing. Things get a bit hectic, but often the horse is not prepared for it. So it might jump really good at home, but as soon as you put it in an environment where there's speakers, balloons, and a crowd, the dynamics will change. And this is where another example of being able to firstly put your groundwork patterns into place and be able to go back to your groundwork. So if you arrive at a venue, your horse is all upset, everything's escalating, I go straight back to my groundwork. So being able to send my horse around me, left, right, backwards, forwards, and then using the relaxation techniques I use, just getting into a horse race. And it works a treat. There's a lot of people out there who've been struggling when they get to the show. The horse gets out the box and it's all boom. It's a stressful environment, other horses around. It's all a big thing for the horse is to get that focus back on me. So I want that focus back on me. So having them shows sometimes it's a little difficult to get the horse to focus back on you, to find a space just to move your horse around. Sometimes that's difficult at big venues and big shows and that. But if you can find a space to just connect with your horse and get them back with you on the ground. So I use that technique before I compete. I don't compete internationally anymore, but I used to. And I would always do my groundwork pattern. It might take me 5 or 10 minutes to do it, make sure my horse is connected with me before I sit on it. The other reason why I use the groundwork practices and techniques is to warm my horse up, also to see whether there's anything that my horse might be lame or stiff. I can see all that stuff on the ground before I even sit on my horse. But the main thing is connection. So if that connection is really struggling and I'm out on a trail ride, for example, I might just hop off. I'll take my rope, my training rope with me, hook it on. I might have my halter underneath my bridle or whatever. But if I'm in training mode, that's what I'll have. I'll have my equipment with me. If I'm really facing a big issue out there, I can hop off, hook my rope on and say, okay, let's work on this. Let's do it on the ground. It's safer on the ground. Some people don't feel safe on the ground. They feel safer when they're sitting on the horse. But if your horse can't cope on the ground, mostly they struggle to cope when you sit on them. And vice versa. Sometimes it's the other way around. But what the groundwork does is put all that into perspective, puts that all into a manageable place with the right techniques to bring the stress level down. So yeah, that's the essence of it. Any questions? Any other questions? Doesn't have to be related to this. It can be anything. If you've got any questions, we've got another 10 minutes or so. So anybody got any questions? There must be somebody with a question. Anybody struggling?
Yeah, everybody's gone quiet.
I think everybody likes to listen, and some people are just learning, I think. So that's okay.
It's all a learning curve, though.
Yeah, that's for sure.
It's brilliant how you explain it, I must admit.
Oh, that's
makes
good.
things a lot easier.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good to hear and good feedback. Thank you, because I'm not used to sitting in front of a computer. Unfortunately, I don't see everybody. I see myself, so I sit and talk to myself for an hour. I find quite difficult.
Oh, bless him.
So I think the format going down the line, the format we may change a little bit so I can actually see people, but it's a different program and a different set of things. But
oh no, I don't want you seeing me. No.
It's good for me. The other thing is that I spend a lot of, I spend every day. I do anything from 6 to 8 horses a day in the summer. So I'm not used to talking in front of a computer without my horse next to me. So it's quite challenging for me too. So your feedback is appreciated. Thank you. Okay, so I've got another question here. If nobody's got any question, I've got another question here which says, my horse won't hack out on its own. Now, being able to hack out on your own is obviously the ultimate goal, but it's so important that you're able to do that. The other question here was, my horse will only go up front, won't go behind. These sorts of things. So with that sort of thing, there's herd dynamics to think about. But obviously, you want your horse to be able to step up to the front of the line if you're riding in a group, or step to the middle or the back. And often when you're up the front and you put the horse at the back, you get jig down the road, and they all excited and they don't want to slow down. And so that's one of the things that you can face if you're riding in a group, for example. Or you could be on your own and your horse is just jig joggy along, and you can't get it to work. So this is where my flexing and my groundwork preparation has come in. So if, for example, my horse is jogging down the road and won't walk, I've spent my time doing my groundwork training, but all I do is pick up one rein and just bend, loosen off there. So if I pick up my left rein, I release my right rein and just pick up a bend and just tip the horse's nose, and that's enough to disengage the hindquarter. The other thing that I've seen people do, which is another technique you can use, is just pick up a circle, pick up a bend, and let the horse walk around in a circle. Or if it's jogging, for example, jog a circle till it walks, and then drop your rein and walk out. What I see some people getting it wrong is that they put their leg on, they pick up a bend, and then put a leg on and actually make the horse move forward. I'm not when I'm in that position, I'm relaxed. I breathe out, make sure I'm nice and relaxed, pick up my bend. If the horse is jig jog, pick up a bend until it comes back to a walk, and then I'll just drop my rein and walk on. I'm a great advocate also of riding on the buckle. I've ridden lots of clients' horses who are struggling with the jig joggy down the road thing. All I do is let go, ride on the buckle, and every time they jig jog, I pick up a bend. Obviously, I've done some preparation, and if the horse is used to flexing and bending, it's a lot easier. But I find a lot of people hold on to both reins and they're pulling on the mouth a little bit, and jig joggy along, and it doesn't make any difference. So to change that dynamic is just to get a slight bend, get that nose to tip around, and that disengages the hindquarter and it'll bring the horse down. Sometimes it doesn't work, and you've got to pick up a circle. So you just pick up a circle till they go back to a walk, and then I'll let go and walk forward. And what you'll find, especially if you're new to this kind of way of riding, trail riding anyway, on the buckle, you'll find that you might bend and get the horse to bend and flex and come down, and then you let go and it'll just jog off again. And I just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Just pick up and bend, disengage your hindquarter. And I've ridden a horse out the other day who really struggled with outriding, but one of his biggest issues was letting go on the front. He was too tight, too much pressure on the mouth. He was starting to rear. When things got really stressy, the rider would pick up reins, get stressed, the body would contract, and all that energy would go into the horse. So when the horse is feeling stressed, the best thing you can do is stay relaxed. I call it stay connected, but expect the unexpected. So I'm always connected to my inner thighs on my horse. But if he does take off or something does happen or he does spook, I'm very careful not to pick up my reins, pull and squeeze, because that just energizes that situation. Because if you can't stay relaxed in that situation, you're just going to escalate the situation. So if you're riding down the road and he just turns around, there's a couple of ladies I work with who horse just turns around and bolts. There's no warning, but there is warning because he hasn't had enough time, maybe desensitizing, the connection's not strong, the relationship is not where it could be. So he's just there's something on the road and that scares me, and boom, I just turn and bolt. scary place to be. So when people say, what do I do in that situation? I say, get off the road, get back in the school, do your groundwork, build a connection with your horse. If you're out on the road and your horse turns and bolts away from something, you're going to end up in big trouble, because if there's something coming the other way, it's a dangerous situation to be in. So my advice is, if your horse turns and bolts out on the road, get off the road, get back in the school and work on it. Get that horse connected, get that horse desensitized as much as you possibly can. Take it to agility type clinics where there are things that you can practice with. I work with a lot with the trek ladies who sometimes have problems with obstacles. One of the biggest things is separation anxiety, especially because in trek you tend to work in pairs, and then you'll split up the pair. And a lot of people have problems with that. So as soon as they split up, the horse just goes, I can't cope, neighing, I can't cope with all this stuff. So what do I do in that situation? Go back to the school, go back to connection. That horse should be thinking with me, not thinking with the other horse over there. If you've got this and you can't split, then the horse is not in the right place. The relationship and the connection is not where it should be or could be. So it's not a criticism. It's just an opportunity to actually grow that connection, grow that trust and relationship. So a lot of it comes back to the same thing. But how to do that? How to get that? Through your groundworking program, through relaxation, through connection. That's where, obviously that's where I come in and show you those techniques. So I think we've got time for one more question. Okay. Rearing up. So someone's asked about when I go out and I can't get my horse to go forward, and it's afraid of what's ahead of it, for example. And I'm trying to get it to go forward, manually handling the horse with the reins, and trying to turn it, whatever the case may be, and it's probably start to rear up. And that's a big problem, obviously, because it's going to happen on the ground or on top of you. But why that happens, normally why this happens is because the horse has got nowhere else to go. So if he's going up in the air, it means you shut the front door, you shut the back door. They might, a lot of times too, they will just reverse. There was a horse I was working with the other day. It'll stop, see something, and just go backwards at speed. So these are all things that go back to preparation, connection, trust, relationship, all these things. But what do you do in this situation? Get off the road, obviously. Don't go out there if you're in that situation. But being able to pick up a bend and disengage your hindquarters, because like I said, what we tend to do, and it's quite a normal human response, is pick up the rein, pull really hard, squeeze on. The horse took off with me. That's what I do. So all I'm doing there is adding energy. What I want to do is obviously stay on as my first priority, stay on the horse, but not pick up and squeeze. And if I'm out of balance, so if the horse turns and spins, often that'll set you off balance. You go forward, you've got your hands on the rein, the horse will pull you forward, drop its shoulder, and bang, you're gone. Firstly, I don't want to be out there if my horse is doing this sort of stuff. But the next thing I would do is be able to pick up a bend and get that horse bending. But once again, I go back to my ability to read my horse, to read the escalation, to see what's going on with different things that are happening along the way, and being able to stop and say, okay, my horse is almost getting to that point where it's going to explode now. And can I recognize that? And what am I going to do about it? And that's where, I might pull off the road, do some flexing. I might even hop off, calm my horse down. There's nothing wrong with getting off your horse. I see people say, don't get off. There's nothing wrong with getting off your horse and de-escalating a situation that could end you up in hospital. But I always go back to the same thing. If I haven't done my preparation, then I probably shouldn't be out there doing this stuff. Okay, cool. So we've got a couple of minutes, so I can take one more question, and then we're gonna finish up for this evening. Thank you for joining us. Annabelle, you got any questions?
No, but I look forward to Monday.
Brilliant. Okay, Annabelle, I look forward to seeing you.
Lovely.
Can I ask
Okay.
you a question, Wayne? I'll give you a question if you've got time.
Yeah, yep.
So, like, you know, how do you know when you're connected up with your horse? How do you know? I'm a novice.
Yep.
And, you know, obviously I'm doing groundwork with Arturo. But obviously this week, you know, my take on the connected up bit was I just tried, we've been just walking to school, been doing just random patterns, really. I just had him following me with the rope, keeping his distance, stopping, you know, so he was respecting my distance and that sort of stuff. I did put the rope up on his back and he continued to follow me. So is that a good indicator that he is connected up and he's doing the same things if there were a rope there? I don't know if I'm tricking him or if it's just,
that's definitely an indication that there's, you know, the connection is starting to grow, definitely, because if you think of a horse in a herd environment and they're all standing and they're grazing in a spot and the lead mare or maybe the stallion picks up and starts to walk off in a direction, they'll all follow. Okay, so that's a good indication that we're connected, we're working, you know, that you're prepared to follow and I can lead the way. So that's a good connection, good indicator of the connection starting to grow. And like I said to you, at the end of each session, I always do that. You can also take the halter off and take the rope off and try it like that too. So maybe a little bit further down the line. But I also do that when I finish my session of my training session. When I go to the paddock, and there's a little method I use to undo my horse slowly with a rope around the neck, and then drop the halter, and then drop the rope off the neck, and see if my horse will follow me in the paddock too. So that's a very good indicator, because often they'll just turn and go up, I'm off to the grass, and leave you.
And can you get to a point with a horse where you could just walk out to the paddock and you could talk to it and it would just follow you? You know, can you get a really strong bond with a horse like that?
Absolutely. So what we're looking for ideally is that the horse, when it sees you, it comes over to you. So I call it your horse catches you. Often I see, a lot of most people catch their horse. I don't see a lot of people their horse catches them, and that's the kind of relationship I want. So when it sees me coming, it goes, "Oh, he's here! Yay! Come on over." And one of the things I see with that can kind of push us in the other direction is with schooling and with educating horses is always the only time you go and get them is when you ride them, for example. Okay, we don't spend time hanging out with them either in the paddock or just bring them in and brush them and just hang out with them. Don't get into a habit of just working your horse every time you bring it in, because they're smart, they know. So if you just bring your horse in every day and flog it, I guarantee you now, when you get to the gate, he won't be running over to you.
Yeah, you got to mix it up.
You've got to mix it up. You've got to build the relation. You've got to hang out with them. I'll often just go sit in the paddock and just brush them or hang out with them and just kind of chat to them, really.
I was watching my two this morning, and the little cob is obviously the boss of this big Norca. Yeah. And I watched the little cob drive the Norca hard, which he does. He drove him off. Yeah. And then he just meandered over to him and was nice to him. It was just think like a horse.
Yeah, that's it. You're getting it. This is a thing, Jim. Is exactly that. So it's like when I do my groundwork training, I'll ask them to do something, but then we always come back and we're
friends again.
We're friends again. Yes, I've asked you to do something. I've asked you to chat, but yes, we're still friends, and that's what happens in the wild. And I read a study about when the horses tell each other off in a herd environment, and someone spent a lot of time doing this and watching these horses. And what happens if one tells another one off and pushes it away? They reckon an average of between 15 to 20 minutes, you'll see those two making up. So a lot of the time mutually grooming, or they'll just come over and acknowledge each other. But a lot of the time, after they may have had a dust up over whatever, their position in the herd or the grass, or whatever the case may be, but they reckon within 15 to 20 minutes, they've made up. So the relationship's not over. Although I've said to you, let's do this, and that might be hard for you to do, and you're learning it, the relationship's not over. It's not a deal breaker. So the really important point that you put out there, and good on you for spending time out there with them, watching them, because that's exactly how we need to be, is understand how they communicate in a herd or a group environment. And it's fascinating to watch if you really open your eyes and your mind to it. It's fascinating.
And you obviously see that with the training. So obviously the training you're doing is, right, we're going to do some work, but guess what? Then we're going to relax. We're going to be friends again. And then I'm going to actually do some work, and you're going to enjoy doing the work because we'll get to relax after. And that's kind of, the difference. It's a little bit rougher in real life, where he was driven off this morning, but they definitely made up, and there's some scratching going on after. So
yeah, brilliant. Oh, that's good, Jim. Well, I look forward to seeing some of you this week and next week. Thank you for joining us. Any comments, feedback, or anything from you guys, if you want to drop us a message or something, it's great. I hope you enjoyed it. I can't hear, I've only heard a few of you, but I hope you've enjoyed it. And, look forward to the next one.